no entendí. Estamos al aire.
We are? Okay,
Yeah,
good.
we're live.
Live. I can't see us, but here we are.
Yeah,
Back at radio.
Live from radio.
We had to dress up today with a long sleeve shirt on because we have a cold front. The high today is only 92 because it rained yesterday. So you got to dress up. Wouldn't want to catch a chill. Yeah. All right, here we are. Yeah.
We're in a very interesting series.
Yeah, we are. We're 2 in, and we got about 5 more to go. And it has been interesting. It started a lot of interesting conversations. But I do think that it's going quickly in the sense that sometimes these stories take real effort to let go of. And I'm just going to be honest, I'm feeling a little fatigue right now because I think we're really slamming this. We're moving quick, moving fast. Not that you want to drag this out, but there's a sadness that comes with
let me say something. I'm far away from the Bible saying this. I'm not trying to make this equal. But when a kid realized that, I'm sorry kids if you're there.
You say Santa Claus and I'm going to hear from people. Okay. All right.
If you
Spoiler alert.
If you said that El Viejo Pascuero, San Nicolás.
Yeah.
I'm saying in Spanish, so it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
People really feel something is broken in their heart. Eventually they realize, why did I think in my life that this could be real? Well,
that's the weight right there.
Feeling is probably something like that.
Yeah. So here you're saying it better than I'm saying it, but here's what I'm feeling. There's a bodily response to letting go of some of what we were told were facts and allowing them to float as functional myths and stories we tell ourselves about God and the world. There's a bodily response. There's a sadness. There's a grief, right? And I think it has a lot to do with what you're saying. It's heavy to recognize that for 40, however many years, we believed things were what they could never have been, what they never pretended to be. There's a real weight, and so Akshay brought it up this morning. Our youth guy brought it up in staff meeting that hey, people are feeling there's a sadness around this. Like people are like, God Almighty, what next stories is are we going to pull on? But so I'm not getting any resistance around. Is this crazy what we're doing? What I'm feeling is.
Are you getting concern from people?
Not even.
Okay.
Nobody talks to me anymore. No one tells me what they're really thinking.
Yeah,
I don't get any feedback. Period. I get 1 or 2 people say.
You're a very nasty guy. Nobody wants to talk with you.
No. Nobody cares. We live in an echo chamber of zero feedback, right? So it's just like living in the desert. You shout and there's no echo coming back. But anyway,
but I think people is thinking.
There's a few people. There's a few people who have said this is thought provoking. But I'm feeling the weight of waking up and realizing I have swallowed ideas for a long time without any thought. And so this is what it means to come of faith as a disciple. This is what it means to pursue, right?
By the way, we are talking about this last sermon, which is about the Noah's flood.
Yeah, the Great Flood.
Yeah, we are talking about this during this series. A couple of weeks ago was the creation, Adam and Eve.
Right.
And now is the Noah's flood. Just in case you just.
Okay, yeah, it's a series that we've called. Wait, what? Bible Stories for Grown-ups. Next week, you're going to talk about the Tower of Babel.
Right.
And then I'm going to pick up after that with Abraham and Isaac.
Oh, that's hard.
And the human sacrifice.
That's tough.
Story of human sacrifice, or almost human sacrifice. And from there, I think we'll go on to the Exodus.
Yeah, I think so.
And then from there, there's a couple more. Or there's Sodom and Gomorrah somewhere in there. But
yeah,
these are hard stories, and it's not because any of us really wanted. There aren't many people left in our ecosystem who are biblical literalists. But the emotional toil of letting go of something that sustained us for all these years is significant. And so I guess I just want to name that today and say it hurts to look down at yourself and realize that I didn't think about this. We were talking about this in staff too just a little bit ago, that some truths, we hold them in our brainstem. They function for us as prejudices. So for example, our ideas of race are brainstem ideas.
Right.
Our ideas of angry God often are rooted here, meaning whatever evidence the world produces that says the opposite doesn't really interact with our brainstem prejudices unless we make a concerted effort to relearn a way to be in the world. Here's an example. If you grew up in a racist family, you have immediate reactions to people based on what you were taught. Well, you're not thinking about that so much
Right.
as it's just a,
It's
right?
there. It's there.
Okay,
It's
and so-
natural.
Right. And so many of us hold our religious ideas entirely back here, which is a very adolescent way to think. A little child on the side of the pool throws themselves into the pool because they know mom's going to catch them, dad's going to catch them, period. It's a simple axiom of their brain function. They just know one will equal the other. But there's a point at which we come of age and we begin to ask ourselves the questions like, we begin to move some of those foregone conclusions back here up into the front. And then they have to sit with the pursuit of evidence and science and reason. And invariably, they don't all survive. In fact, in some cases, most of them don't survive. And so if you're feeling, which I'm sure you're feeling, the people who are tracking with this, if you're feeling a level of sadness or despair related to letting go of cosmovisions and worldviews that you were taught not to question, be really kind to yourself and move really, really slow, because here's my experience with grief work. You can postpone it at best, but it will be done. It has to be done. And anytime a story dies, that's grief. Anytime a version of God dies,
That's grief.
that's grief.
Right.
There will need to be a gathering at a graveside to throw some dirt on top of something we thought was unquestionable. And so I guess I just feel somber about that right now. Somber meaning sobrio.
Yeah.
I just think we could rush this too fast and do ourselves a disservice. And then, not to mention what's going on in our world and in our country and in our lives right now. I mean, it's a tough time. It's a tough time. I guess I had forgotten that this summer was going to be the summer of a raging Supreme Court. Maybe we could have done happy instead of something hard. I have a feeling that there is a collection of strength and energy around really putting this country back where some people thought it should be in 50s and 40s, 50s or whatever. I have a feeling there's a real concerted effort afoot to reverse the clock. And so, yeah, I mean, we lost so much during COVID, lost 1 million people just in this country alone. We lost so much.
Yeah.
It feels
these
like it's
are
a
hard
season of
times.
loss.
Yeah.
I feel like, and this
That's
is
fine.
probably something you shouldn't say publicly, but I feel like we're coming to the end of another mythology, not just our biblical stories, but we're coming to the end of the American mythology. That this is a country based on freedom, that this is a country based on religious rights. Does that still feel right to you? That this is a country of tolerance, that this is a country built on godly morals? Does that still feel right? Because that myth is crashing hard. I'll tell you, as soon as our economic power folds, the power of our myth goes with it.
Right. Because that's
What this has
to
always been
support
about. This
everything.
has always only been about that. We've only deployed God language in order to legitimize our economic ambition. We got to tell a better story.
we put God to support any kind of successful endeavor. Like if you have a big church, a lot of people, that's maybe
Yeah, don't ask hard questions
God,
because
God
it's
is
clearly
God
the
is
Spirit
there.
of God. Yeah.
God is there doing something.
God is so many things we make. I was telling you
Yeah.
before, I can't remember which of the Greek philosophers said this, but it's the hardest thing for me to square up to right now because I think he's right. And he simply said, if horses had a god, it would look like a horse.
A bigger horse, a stronger horse, but a horse at the end.
We can only fashion what we can understand. And what we're looking at this summer as a community of faithful people trying to do legitimate work around the gospel and the Bible, what we're looking at are phases of our ability to understand God and then their subsequent death. And so the bigger question is, I think, is our version of God dying? I think it is.
And it's
Our version
And
of
we
a fire, what was it that
and we
Sam
should,
said in a sermon,
and
or
we
fire
should-
sky god or whatever?
and we should take time to mourn because of that.
Listen, if we created
feels-
these gods, we got to bury these gods. I'm ending up more in a position where I think what I can comfortably say is that God is the ground of being itself, and he just never was fully those previous iterations of my imagination. So when you tinker with where my imagination comes from, and it was shaped by a particular read of an ancient text, and when you're honest with as many variations of God as appear in our text, and with no attempt to even harmonize them, there's great, sad, heavy grief work to do. So that's just where we're at.
Yeah.
So give me
It
some
is.
good news. What's the good news?
Coffee is good.
Coffee's good. I'm also not done with it, so I have some more to enjoy. I'll
that's
tell you
good-
what's good
that's good
news is the Midnight's coming out with a record in the fall. That's good news.
What? Today?
No, in the fall.
Oh, in the fall. Sorry.
That's good news. They played some Alanis Morissette at the coffee shop earlier. That's good news. Any questions? Any engagements?
You know,
Probably not.
but I would like to say something. Myths, which is a word that I know so many people doesn't like.
Myth?
Myth, especially when you say that there's myth in the Bible, people react in so different ways. They don't understand actually what myth is for literature or for the ancient world.
Yeah.
Would you say it's just the vehicle to carry a truth or something more deep? But sometimes we just got stuck into the myth, and we defend just the myth and not the truth that it carries.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you said earlier, you had some dicho in Spanish, some Spanish way of saying, I point at the moon and all you see is my finger.
Yes.
And so these ancient mythological stories are pointing at a truth, and we can't see the truth because all we can see is the story,
finger,
the
yeah.
finger. When I use the word myth, you guys have to know that is probably the highest value category I could possibly name with words. I do not say myth as a pejorative, derogatory term.
Yes.
To me, to say
We are
that something
using
is
the
myth,
not in the way that the Mythbusters
no,
use
I'm not
that word.
No, I'm not.
We are using the myth as
Is the way Joseph Campbell used the myth. I'm talking about stories of deepest meaning. I think the highest categories of truth, something in those categories, or a couple things that would be in that group of categories would be poetry, would be myth, would be epic stories of meaning. That's what we're talking about. It goes so much further than this boat was exactly this big and exactly every animal on earth fit in it and exactly every fossil is made to look old by God. And that's the stuff that, to me, that just feels silly. Myth is a huge... When I elevate the story of creation to the level of a myth, that tells me that 34 centuries later, or however many years later, it still features strongly in our consciousness.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So,
that's how the myths
function.
are.
Yeah, that's how they
function.
function.
You
Yeah.
need to be attractive. It needs to be like
Spectacular.
spectacular. Yeah, to challenge your imagination.
Yeah, boring stories don't live long,
Yeah.
do they? No, exactly. And they don't quicken the imagination.
We
Yeah.
have someone here, our beloved Trey Pruitt.
Oh my gosh. Trey, you're supposed to be on vacation,
Okay,
bro.
it's a long sentence, so
I
it's
can't
better
read
if
it.
you
I can't even see it.
You can see.
Okay, Jenny and I gathered with young adults last night. I know we heard about this, Trey. And we talked about the challenges of these conversations with their own uber-conservative families. But as they are spreading their spiritual wings, these truths sit well, whereas old thinking never did. I'm proud of this next generation for not only wanting to sit with the progressives in a physical church, but wanting to get together on a Monday night around the table and continuing the dialogue, continue to support and sharpen each other. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I heard all about that story. Trey wasn't at staff meeting today because Trey's on his way to get out of town for a while where they say it might be a little cooler. But Akshay was in staff meeting, and Akshay was also there last night, and he said the same thing. Here's what I predict will happen. The courage around which we named this awkward will reignite the imagination of people who the fact that we weren't willing to name this, that's what shut them off. So the 20s to 30s, the teens to 35s, I don't know how you want to categorize it, the people who are getting in the gap between the academy and the pew, and they're getting no answers from our evangelical family members or our past, those people are their imagination will come back online because all they need is for someone to say, yeah, this is foundationally, fundamentally unbelievable. There's something more beautiful here than fact.
That's right.
That's important. And so I'm proud of kids too not kids, but I'm proud of people who would gather and say, this is hard work and this is the work. And I think that's exactly what we're saying. So
Yeah, you're planting, in some way, you're planting the seed of another conversations conversations that
Yeah.
we need to have.
We need to have because doubt and faith go together. Yeah, curiosity is what drives discipleship, not certainty. Not certainty.
Yeah,
Walter Brueggemann said that
and
a
I
long
think
time
if
ago.
someone feels confused or disappointed,
Yeah.
I mean that's okay.
That's
It's
okay.
okay. It's
Yeah.
a
I
those
mean,
are valid emotions for this time.
That's right. And how large was the feeling we carried on board when we were ridiculed in public spaces for the silliness of our myths? That was a feeling too, but we've just learned to live with that. We call that persecution in America. We think we're being persecuted when someone introduces some of their faith ideology in education spaces and public institutions. We feel persecuted because we can't, open our Bible and start preaching from it in college.
Right.
We've told ourselves all sorts of things. The reality is that's not persecution. And we lived with a sense of enmity. That's an English word, enemistad. We lived with a sense of constantly being attacked because we say secular society is after our truths. And the reality is guys, we don't even honestly explain or believe that every animal literally on this green earth fit in a boat. So all I'm doing is introducing one sadness for the other. Let's let go of incoherent ideologies, and let's accept instead that we have to hold them more gently than we have, and we have to be more humble than we've been.
Yeah.
And I think we get to be truth seekers. That part is natural enough, but we've compartmentalized where we keep our secular truth and our religious truth. That's the thing, right? So
Yeah.
Some of us are scientists that just don't ever ask these questions of our text. The reality is, all I'm saying is we need to be more curious. And I think young people will say, okay, now I can deal with that level of honesty. So I don't know. We'll see. What else?
And no, there's no more comments there. Rather than there's a few comments that say, for example, bendiciones desde Cuba.
Okay.
From
Bendiciones,
Cuba.
hermano.
And Juani Garcia that says nothing. Sorry. Oh, this is an empty message over there. And
Heather McInerney.
Yeah, that's a great example, but I'm not so sure in which moment she said that. Anyways,
What's a great example? I don't know.
I don't know. You are a great example.
We're super unprofessional. All right, let's wrap this up. I'm going to tell you something that Caesar and I just observed sitting right here. So you can't see behind the camera, but from where we're sitting, I was watching a grackle. So a grackle it's kind of a famous Austin thing. A boat-tailed grackle is a legendary local bird. They're very loud. They congregate at all the HEBs. Anyway, they're kind of a hysterical Austin fixture. Well, there was a female grackle hopping along the curb here. Talk about the adaptation of things.
Yeah.
Talk about species longing to find new ways of thinking and being in the world. This grackle was hopping along, picking out the bugs from the grills of the cars that are pulled in here in these parking
It
spots.
was like watching something, picking stuff from a buffet.
Yeah, it's like walking along, I'll take a little of this, a little of that, a little of this, a little of that. So we've known forever, guys, that species adapt and move and evolve and learn. We're doing it. If a grackle can learn to eat a juicy bug picked out of the grill of a Volvo and a Toyota, grasshoppers or bugs that they don't have the capacity to catch themselves probably, if we can watch those animal species learn and adapt, we know this to be fun. We can observe this. Why can't we do the same with our linguistic limitations and the ways in which we describe God?
Yeah.
I mean, we sit atop a
You know,
triangle of development
we
and
are
consciousness.
here because our ancestors learned how to adapt
That's right.
to a new reality.
That's
but
right.
for some reasons, we don't want to adapt to the reality anymore. We want to adapt
or we want
their
to-
reality to us.
Or even worse is we want to deny that adaptation is even a thing. Guys, it's a fundamental principle. This is why I think we get to adapt and adjust. I think we need a new reformation. We need a new revolution. We need a new way of thinking about truth. We need a new way of thinking about God. It's not a three-leveled universe anymore where God is this person keeping this really angry person watching everything you do, keeping notes on everything you do. We must let go things that we've outlived.
Do you know a theologian? She passed away, Phil Stickle.
Oh yes. Studied her in
she
seminary.
said something about something strong, big happen in faith every 500 years,
Yeah,
and she
yeah.
make the math and everything, and she said,
It's
but
time.
guess what? We are just in time
It's just in
to the
time.
next revolution. And
So-
I say amen.
So if you're feeling the weight of this, sit gently with yourself now. Be compassionate. Don't be antagonistic. Last thing you want to do is charge into family dinners and start throwing their stories
That's
overboard.
right.
Don't do that. You know, I remind you of the story that we opened the series with of the chief of the Tabaru, Togo Amulamu. When I saw with my own eyes and was able to touch with my own hands what they claimed to be of mythological value, and I understood them to be natural outcroppings of minerals from the ocean, you don't say that to them. You don't go in and pull someone's
There's no point.
flannel graph
No.
god off the flannel graph. That's immaturity, and that's what we need to set aside. And so don't. If people track and people are pressuring you to whatever, don't bite the hook. Don't engage. Here's the thing about prejudices. Religious truths that we hold to be unquestionable are lodged in a part of your brain that words often don't get to. So you can talk till you're blue in the face and not move them. So let's be way less proselytes. Let's be way less evangelists. Let's be appreciators of the revelation of God, and let's walk in the truth that we have. And it just so happens that we're in the moment now, I think, where one needs to give way to the next. It's not that truth won't remain. It's that some of these stories weren't what we were told they were. But there's no, the poison isn't the story. The poison is the way we were told to cleave onto it and make everyone else wrong. So
That's
tough
right.
waters ahead. Should be interesting.
Some leftovers.